Hello, welcome to another one of Mr. Burson's supplemental help videos. This video is for Lesson 02, Print Statements. So, we've just gotten started with the Python programming language. Hopefully by now we've gone over turtles. The idea behind turtles was, of course, to show us that coding is sequential. So remember, sequential coding means that we are dealing with code that has to be done in a certain order. If we bring it out of order, then the code will not behave as we expect it to. That said, let's move on to print statements. Print statements, in general, are going to be the main way that we get output in our terminal. So I have my file over here, my terminal over here, and let's begin with something incredibly simple. Let's begin with a single print statement. Print statement has the word print. Typically on mine, it will change to that color purple, and then I have two parentheses that need to be immediately afterward. I want to show you real quick, by the way, what happens if I don't put those parentheses there. I'm going to save this, I'm going to try running it, and it works, but I can tell you that this print statement didn't actually do anything. I'll show you why here in just a moment. I put those parentheses there, and I run this again, and there is a change here. Did you notice it? So, last time when I ran this, there was just back to these little three arrows, which is just my command line. But now I have this space here. So by putting these parentheses here, the print statement did do something. It printed something. Now we can't see what that is, and that's because it's blank. If I had more print statements, you would actually see more of those blank lines. So let's put in 5 print statements. Save and run this. Boom. Suddenly we can very visibly see we have 5 blank lines. All right, let's come back to the beginning. So let's say I wanted to do something very simple. Let's say I just wanted to print out the number 25. Can I do that? Absolutely, there we have it. We have 25 right here. Let's say then, instead, I wanted to print out some sort of a math problem. So I could print out 25 plus 25, and the expected output will be, this time around, 50, because, shock and surprise, 25 plus 25 does equal 50. Now, we're going to change things around a little bit. Let's change up our symbol here. So instead of that plus sign, I'll do a minus sign. Our expected output is 0, of course. Now, let's take into account a couple more symbols that we have at our disposal here. The first one that we'll go over is the backslash symbol. That symbol means divide. So 25 divided by 25 will be 1. Now, we'll talk about why this says 1.0 here in just a moment, but for now, we know that the division was done correctly. 25 divided by 25 is in fact 1. Last but not least, we have one other symbol that we are going to be using, and it may not be a symbol that you use too often. It is called the asterisk symbol, sometimes also called the star symbol. You can find it by hitting Shift and then the number 8 on your keyboard. Once you save and run this, we will see that we get the expected outcome again, which is 25 times 25, which is 625. So there we have it. Here's what we've seen so far. Our print statement is able to print out numbers, and it is able to print out math equations. And we can print out complicated math equations as well. We know that's 25 times 25 equals 625. So let's add 75 to it. Then our expected outcome is 700. Something else that we need to go over right now as well is Python follows PEMDAS. So remember and recall what PEMDAS is, okay? PEMDAS is parenthesis. So we have parentheses, exponents, multiply and divide, then add and subtract in that order. So with that in mind, Python should be following those rules. Now, we haven't covered what this is yet, but I'm putting this up here as a note. This is what's called a comment. My code is actually going to ignore all of this stuff up here in red. Just know that. We don't have to worry about them right now. So I should still expect the same exact outcome, and that's exactly what I get. But, of course, I could change that outcome, again, by adding in a couple of parentheses. Now, I'm expecting it to be 100 times 25. And that's exactly what happens. I get 2,500. Okay, let's move on from numbers with the print statement. Let's move on to something else instead. Notice that in the back here, when we had print 25 divided by 25, we ended up getting the value of 1.0. Now, it's weird, right, that said 1.0, but consider Python is running on a computer, and the computer doesn't quite know what the outcome of 25 divided by 25 is going to be. So, to be safe, we have converted from one data type to another, and this is a new word that we're going to be introducing here. So, data types. 25 is equal to a integer. So an integer, if you recall from math class, is any whole number, any real whole number. 25 is an integer. Other integers would include -5, 7, 87,324, any number that is real. All right, so that is an integer. The other data type that we're going to go over as well, when we see 1.0, that is a floating point decimal. Huge word, right? Fear not. We call these floats or a float in Python. So you can abbreviate all that to just float, and that's what I'm going to call them throughout the video as well. So a floating point decimal, again, a float, is any number that has a decimal after it. And we can see why this matters if I change this to something like 25 divided by 20. So I save and run this, and I get 1.25. There we have it. We have a decimal number that came out of this because 25 divided by 20 doesn't equal an exact whole number. It is 1.25. Similarly, if I were to take 1.25 and I were to multiply that by 20, you would find that we would not end up with a perfectly whole number. We will end up with 25.0. And that is because if there is any floating point decimal, any float, then everything gets converted to a float afterward. All right, we've talked about integers, we've talked about floats. We have one more data type to talk about, and that is probably the most important one that we're going to be dealing with throughout the class, and that is a string. So this is a common first program for any programmer to run, and that is printing out the phrase hello world. So I'm going to save and run this, and we're going to find that when I have these quotes, these two little quotes around my string here, then I get hello world back. And let's see for a moment what happens if I don't have those quotes. So I'm going to go ahead and save and run this. Boom. Immediately throws me an error, says syntax error, perhaps you forgot a comma. All that's saying is Python doesn't know what I'm trying to do. Excuse me. Python doesn't know what I'm trying to do there. So it's saying, did you mean something else? And the answer at the end of the day is, well, yeah, I did. I meant to put quotes around it. All right, so we've talked about all of that. Let's add this to our definitions up here. So hello world would be a string. Now, here's the important part. Here's what trips a lot of folks up. Is we have dealt now with integers, with floating point decimals. So I'm going to put 25 in quotes, and I'm going to add it to another 25 in quotes. Now, most of the time, right, this is 25 plus 25. We're expecting 50. Well, that's strange, isn't it? We got 25, 25. Here is a very, very important point that we need to review right here, right now. When we put something into quotes, Python stops seeing this as numbers. It now sees it as a literal, you mean the symbol for 2 and the symbol for 5, not the value of 2 and the value of 5, the symbol for 2 and the symbol for 5. That means 25 plus 25 plus takes on a new meaning here. 25 plus 25 really means smash the symbols, the symbol of 2 and 5, together with the other symbol 2, 5. So we have 2, 5, 2, 5, smash them together, boom, we have 25, 25. So if I were to remove those quotes, we would see that behavior come right back. we would see it equal 50 again. So again, those are being defined as integers, so Python knows what to do with them. Here's what we've covered so far. We've covered 3 different data types. We've covered integers, floats, and strings. Now it's important to talk about what it means to try and combine both of these. There are going to be times throughout the class that you're going to want to print out something, such as maybe you'll want to say something like this. You are, and then we're going to have a plus here. We're going to say you are 15 years old. Now, everything we've seen up to this point says that this is going to work, right? So it's just going to print out you are 15 years old. Let's go ahead and see what the behavior is. Big red text and error. So here's our error down here. Can only concatenate. Let's take that word right here, right now. Can only concatenate. Let's define what concatenate means. Concatenate means to link two or more items together. Okay? So concatenate, to link 2 or more items together. When it's saying can only concatenate str, str is the first 3 letters of string. So it's saying can only concatenate a string, not an integer. Not int, an integer, right? We see the first 3 letters there. Can only concatenate a string, not integer, to another string. Here's what that's saying in English. Python is reading through this print statement saying, okay, you are, all right, looks like you want me to concatenate something. Whoa! The next thing you gave me was not a string, but instead an integer. I don't really know what to do with that, so I'm just going to toss an error and call it a day. How can we go about fixing that? Very easily. If you have a number that you want to convert to a string, then use str and then parentheses and then whatever x is, right? Whatever x is, what you want to convert. Okay? So x is whatever you want to convert. So that means right here, I'm going to put str, and then I get a little helpful hint here, but I don't exactly need it. So str 15 plus years old. So that is going to convert it from the integer 15 to the string 15. Let's run this again. There we have it. You are 15 years old. And this works the other way around too. So if we have something to convert from a number to a string, then we have something to go from a string to a number. That is int. And then we put whatever we want to convert to a number in there. So let's go ahead and see that in action. Let's instead say print integer. I'm going to put 25 in quotes, and then I'm going to add that to 10. Now remember, even though 25 started as a string, I'm converting it to an integer. So let's go ahead and save and run this. My expected outcome is 35. Let's see what happens. And that's exactly what I get because this is all the same. If I remove int, let's take a look what happens if I remove int. We get a type error again. Can only concatenate string, not int to string. So to convert from a string to a number, we can use int. Again, something else that flows from this is if int converts it to an integer, then float converts it to a floating point decimal. And we can see the exact same behavior. The only additional thing here is that 0.0 because it's saying, oh, this is a decimal number. And 35.0 is still 35. Let's take a look at everything that we have gone over here. So I will put that down here as well. String to a decimal number, then use float. Okay? We just went over 3 different data types and everything that the print statement can accomplish. All right? So a very complicated print statement might look something like this. Hello. I see that your name is, I'm going to put a plus here. I'm going to say Mr. Burston. I can put another plus after this. I see that you are, let me put a space after this. I see that you are, and then I'm going to put a space, plus I'm going to convert to a string. I'm going to say 15. We'll pretend I'm 15 years old again. Say 15 years old. Okay, so let's go ahead, save this and run it. We can see that I'm using multiple concatenation, multiple instances of a concatenation. So again, concatenate is just to link two or more items together. I'm concatenating all of these strings together. I have made sure to convert my number from a string to a from a number to a string, sorry, from a number to a string, and then I'm concatenating that with the rest of the sentence. Let's see how that looks. Hello, I see that your name is Mr. Burston. I see that you are 15 years old. There we have it. One last minor note that I'm going to make as well. So you'll notice that I put all these little random spaces in, and they can seem a little random until I get rid of them. Take a look what happens when I get rid of these two spaces over here. We look at my output again. Hello, I see that your name is Mr. Look at that, there's no space anymore. And we can see that there's no space before the I either. So those spaces are there because Python is very literal. It said, oh, you want a space there? I can give you a space there. You want 5 spaces there, and I can give you 5 spaces there. I hope this was helpful in reviewing the concepts learned during lesson 2, the print function. If you have any questions, please don't hesitate to ask during class or to send me an email. If this, I hope this helped you out a little bit, and I'll see you around. Have a good day.